my name is Mike Valentine. I am a former Little Leaguer with Ridge-Beverly Little League. My first season was 1970, and I played through until I was 16 through the Pony League and the Colt League. My first 2 seasons I was with the Pee Wee Orioles, progressed into the Indians, into the major leagues. I remember our 71 Pee Wee team. If you look at the team photo of the 71 Pee Wee team, it was the most lovable, huggable group of kids you could ever imagine. We had full families on that team, from scorekeepers, sisters, down to little brothers as bat boys. We finished that season really strong. We showed up as a bunch of kids ready to play baseball, and we left that season as baseball players. The 72 Orioles, we lost a couple of older brothers on the 71 team, and we picked up some ringers. Joe O'Donnell, Jimmy O'Donnell, and then as a bat boy, Johnny O'Donnell. And we kept going through the 72 season as strong as we finished the 71 season. We took it all the way to the championship. I mean, hands down, that was the best team ever assembled in baseball. That 72 Oriole team. Now, it was a close second is the 71 team, and it's definitely a fan's favorite. The 72 was the pinnacle of my career. And then I remember in 73 on the Indians, we lost the championship to the Dodgers. After that, I think my skills started to diminish just a touch, and the championships were further off into the distance. I remember there was a little bit of advice from some of the coaches. We had a couple of coaches. One happened to be Dr. Ruby. Called him Doc Ruby. He happened to be the dentist for the White Sox. And he always gave you some, like, very positive advice. And then, as far as one of the fathers, Frank Cavallon, Mr. Cavallon, he just showed up in a great mood. Even when you failed at something, it didn't bother him. There was always a way for him, and my dad too, to try to turn it into positive as a learning experience. My dad's name, Angelo Valentine. His first season as a coach was 1971. He had the Pee Wee Orioles. And he had a love for baseball, an absolute love to watch kids, not only his own, the whole team, the whole league actually, progress as baseball players. He just loved to teach the game of baseball. He coached for over 10 years, well over 10 years, maybe close to 15. There were 3 of us that played. My little sister might have played way back in the day when they started with the girls playing. He just loved it. Everything, the whole summer long was baseball. The whole house just full of baseball. Scorebooks, equipment, kids just walking in and house, trying borrowing equipment. Didn't bother him. He loved it. He just loved teaching it. He loved teaching the game of baseball. I think there was one year he actually coached 2 teams at once.
So your dad dedicated all those years to coaching baseball. That must have been kind of hard on your mom. I mean, you know, taking all that time away from the family and stuff.
That could be a very big part of his success. She allowed the whole house to be taken over by baseball, scorebooks, the whole thing. You know, on Sundays, the table got cleared so we could eat dinner. We ate dinner on Sundays as a family in the dining room. But the rest of the week, just the whole dining room taken up by baseball. So I would definitely credit her for allowing him to just have his freedom to do what he loved, coach. That's for all the coaches, because back in the 70s, they had passion. They put their whole heart into it. There was families involved in the whole league. This park came to life on the weekends. Just absolutely amazing. The mothers, you have to give all the wives and moms a lot of credit for allowing their life to be, their whole summer to be consumed by baseball. Play ball, baseball.
My name's Tom Beck. I'm from this neighborhood. I grew up in St. Barnabas, and I went to St. Barnabas, and I played in the Ridge-Beverly Little League in the early 60s, and played on the Rebels. And my brother Dan, he's still pretty short. He was a catcher, and we had a pitcher, Bob Beck, and he was in the Little League. He was about 5'11", one of the tallest Little Leaguers I've ever known. And he'd pitch, and they'd have a meeting at the mound. And my brother was about 5'5", and this Bob Beck was about 5'11". So it was kind of a funny situation to see those two meet. I played first base with the Rebels, and but anyway, I went on to umpire, and I umpired in Ridge-Beverly in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, and I got involved in umpiring through Buck Leslie, and he asked me to umpire, and I came, and it got me into umpiring, and then I went on to high school ball after Ridge-Beverly. The only memorable moment, I've had a few memorable moments. I'd make a call, and out would come Pat Curtin, a manager, and my heart would start pounding, because Pat was a gentleman, but he had a way about him, and that was one of the first times I ever admitted, "Hey, Pat, I blew that call, I'm sorry." And he would say thank you and turn around and walk back to the dugout. And it was hard to admit I blew a call, but I've done it. And one of the most memorable moments was a playoff game. I think Terry Regan told me it was the Miners, and it was a close game. Went down to the last inning, and there were 2 outs, and the tying run was rounding third, coming home, and a young catcher named Dave, I forget his name, but the throw come in, the guy slid into home plate, Dave got the ball, tagged him, and there was a cloud of dust, and you could hear a pin drop, and then the umpire, myself, screams as loud as he can, "Show me the ball!" And the kid looked up at me like, and then he showed me the ball. Out. I signaled he was out, and I've been reminded of that call a lot over the last 30 years. Giving back to Ridge-Beverly in the neighborhood. This is a wonderful neighborhood, and Ridge-Beverly Little League, and was so much a part of it. And St. Barnabas, Fisher, Christ the King, and so forth. But giving back, being a part of that, and seeing guys, the coaches in a tavern at night, and just the camaraderie, I was part of it. I did give a clinic once. I was honored. They asked me to do a clinic for the new umpires that were coming into the league, and I did that at Ridge Park, and I hope it helped those that were starting their career as umpires.
My name's Chris Lydon, and I had the pleasure of participating in the Ridge-Beverly organization. I started my illustrious career back then in 1972, and I played through 1977. A lot of great memories during those times. I started out in Pee Wees, played for the Cubs, and I played for the Red Legs in the minors. And then when I made it to the show, the majors, I played for the Giants for 3 years. So we had a lot of great times, and primarily I was a pitcher. I played first base. Sometimes I would play left field, and they'd kind of move me around. In the Pee Wees for the Cubs, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Didier was our coach. He was a great coach. Then in the minors with the Red Legs, this is when I met the Harrigan family. Timmy Harrigan was my coach for the Red Legs. And then when I got to the Giants, Richard Harrigan was our coach, and then Richard coached us 1 year, and then Mr. Hill coached us the remaining 2 years. But I would say the most memorable season and coach I had was probably Richard Harrigan. He was great to play for. Our team had a lot of success, and we just had a great group of guys, and Richard knew how to motivate us. And hopefully you get a chance to talk to Richard for this project, or someone from the Harrigan family, because their fingerprints are all over the Ridge-Beverly League. So I really enjoyed that time playing for Richard. One of the unique things about Ridge-Beverly was the fact that because it's a team sport, you got to know kids from other schools. So, for instance, I went to St. Barnabas, so I had guys like Eddie Cullinan, who I went to school with. Eddie's a good friend, and hopefully you speak to him. Eddie was on our teams. He was a great wingman. I probably was his wingman. He was the man back in the day. But you got to meet kids from St. John Fisher, you got to meet kids from Sutherland, you got to meet kids from Clissold, other schools, Vanderpool, and it really forced you to get out of your, quote, inner circle and then meet other kids and get along with other kids and get to know them and deal with situations, and that was pretty fun. So that was always interesting, your first practice when you met the other kids on the team and seeing where they were from, and it forced you how to develop relationships with other kids.
What would you say you took from baseball that you carried into your adult life?
I would say just kind of being held accountable on our team and just getting along with other people. I mean, it's interesting. I'm a father now. I've got 3 kids. They played sports and baseball, but with our team, in my experience, I mean, Richard was the coach, so what he said went. You really didn't question that. But he was fair, and you wanted to play for him. And we had some pretty good success. So I think also being accountable to your other team members is important. On our team, we didn't have. I mean, we had, I'd say, a number of pretty good players. We weren't a team that had one really, really good player. We had a lot of guys who were pretty good most of the time, so we could kind of rely on each other. And then you learned how to be held accountable. Show up on time when you're supposed to. Don't phone it in. If you're there, give it your all, and do the same in life. So that's what I try to tell my kids. My family moved out of our house on Levitt back in the day. My older brother Jack found this baseball, and it's from 1975 when I was on the Giants. For some reason, I got a ball signed by the entire team. I don't know if it was because I was a pitcher or because I made the All-Star team or what have you, but it's pretty funny looking at some of these names on there. Eddie Cullinan, Brett Oakley, Jim Hill, Al Gannon, Michael Duran, some of these names. And we moved out of there a few years ago. I was living out of town. My brother found it, and he gave me the ball, so it's something I'm hanging on to. So it's a great memory piece for me to look back on when times were a lot simpler.
Yeah, hi, my name's Dan Grunhard. I grew up right in St. John Fisher, not too far from the park here. Grew up right by Monroe Park, but when we played Little League here, we played both at Beverly and Monroe. My first experience with Ridge-Beverly Little League was 1972. My father brought me right over to the clubhouse right behind us and signed me up for Little League. We played baseball from sun up till dinner, and usually we started playing right around when the ice and the snow started melting. We'd get out and play baseball. And that's how it was. We played all the sports, baseball and basketball and hockey. But the first taste I had of any organized baseball was here at Ridge-Beverly. Ridge-Beverly Little League Pee Wee Yankees. A guy named Joe Taylor was a lawyer from Chicago. He was the manager, and my dad was a Chicago policeman, and they hit it off pretty well. I think they knew each other professionally, with Mr. Taylor being a lawyer, my dad being a cop. So we had a lot of interest. That field right behind us, I remember playing, it was a pitcher back then primarily, and my dad would stand behind the fence and he'd call the pitches, and he'd tell me where to locate them, and we worked out all the time, my dad and I. We actually had one game, and I sent you a picture of the baseball, and that was a one-hitter I threw. I think I was just like 7, 8 years old, Pee-wees. I had 15 strikeouts. I think we played 7 innings or something, right? So I pitched. Yeah, it's unheard of now, even the big league level. Kids pitching that many innings.
Right.
But my dad was behind there that game, calling all the pitches, telling the location and stuff. And
Awesome.
really cool. After finishing the T-shirt and ball cap team, we graduated to full uniforms. That was a major level, and that's where I met this fella here, Denny Sheahan. Him and I were classmates at St. John Fisher, and we were constant companions. Played fast pitch, off the wall, just about every day. If it wasn't for this guy right here, I probably wouldn't be the hitter I am or was professionally.
Yeah.
He taught me how to hit the hanging curveball pretty well.
Yeah. We worked on that. We worked on that to a flawless finish.
But he's a great sport. He's a great sport, Of course, most of us played high school baseball. Played high school, and then I got an opportunity to play in college.
What high school?
St. Lawrence. Played baseball there all 4 years, varsity, and then got a chance to play in college at Northwestern University. And that's where I began to think maybe there's a little bit more that I can go for, pursuing this game of baseball. Around my sophomore year in college, I started getting letters from different organizations, and scouts would come and talk to me and things like that, and I never really thought about it, but at that point I started to see maybe there's a potential there, My sophomore year in college, I was second in the nation in hitting. I was a few points below a guy named Ionetta from Purdue, I believe, or maybe it was one of the schools out east, but I hit 451 that year, and things were really starting to open up for me. When I went to Northwestern, I was an outfielder, designated hitter. And I was drafted by the California Angels in the June draft, amateur draft of 1986, and had my first taste of professional baseball that spring of 1987.
That must have been amazing.
It really was something, coming from here, playing here, and knowing all the kids I grew up with and everything, and then having an opportunity to play professionally was really special. And as I progressed through the minor leagues up into AAA level, a couple 3 years in big league spring trainings, I played with Dave Winfield and Dante Bichette, Claudel Washington, Chili Davis, the hitting coach now with the Cubs, a friend of mine. It was amazing going from these parks here that we all grew up in to playing in Anaheim and things like that, and just experiencing all that's amazing. Really cool.
Mr. Valentine was a character. The guy would come to the games like he came out of a discotheque, but he was all business.
He was.
And you could tell guys on his team, Signorelli's and the Valentines and Ray Duran, all his players knew how to play baseball.
That's
they were
right.
all, and they seemed like they were having a little bit more fun than us. I mean, we were having fun, but
right over your left shoulder.
He was a good coach.
Right over your left shoulder, right here, right where that tree's at, up to that fence. Mr. Valentine, basically taught me how to pitch.
Yeah, he would teach you against that fence.
Yeah, we would sit there and he would stand right here and we would go through the whole motions. Just right here. I could see it happening right as we speak. It's amazing. Right here, Mr. Valentine.
Yeah, I played with Mike Valentine, Joe Valentine.
All good athletes. The kids were really good athletes too. All of them were.
Yeah, they were good.
This is America. Coming here now, it's been a long time. been a real long time since I've been back here.
And you're where?
I live in Atlanta, outside Atlanta. I've been there for 20-something years now. But coming back here to Beverly Park again, it's probably the first time I've sat in Beverly Park since high school, you know, going back 1982. So, you know, sitting here right now and thinking about all the different things, looking at these fields here that haven't changed at all. I mean, they're basically the fresh coat of paint, you know?
Same.
But everything's the same. I mean, everything's the same.
Nothing's changed.
But
coat of paint.
there's a lot of golden memories on these fields. A lot of lessons learned. A lot of things that I probably subconsciously brought onto some of the diamonds I played at professionally. The skills and the ideas and the different things that I learned here on these fields were brought to those fields. It's a unique place, Beverly Park.
Hi, my name is Steve Riordan. I played Ridge-Beverly baseball in the late 60s, early 70s. I just have very fond memories of it. It was a lot of fun. Probably the thing that stands out the most is I was on the Major League Red Legs. We were undefeated and we had an unbelievable team. Tom wanted me to mention that many of you know I was born with one hand, so I was kind of a unique player. I never really thought of myself as handicapped, probably a testament to my parents. We played baseball from sunup to sundown. If it wasn't up at Beverly Park, we were playing behind Cotton's garage or down at 104th and Bell. We were just playing baseball all the time. Actually, the only coach I really remember was Mr. Fox. He owned Fox's Pizza. He was our coach on the Red Legs. I have fond memories of him. He was very involved with it. He also sponsored our team. The Red Leg team, the players that I remember are the Jacobson brothers, Greg Galata, Dave Scow, but no one could beat us. Dave Scow was a pitcher that no one could hit. Fond memories of that. Baseball, like any sport, it teaches you discipline and camaraderie with your teammates. And I have very fond memories of Ridge-Beverly baseball.
My name is Marty Gleason. I started with Ridge-Beverly Little League as a 9-year-old. I was cut by Mr. Ruberry, who was the manager of the Red Legs. I was greatly distressed. He kept this kind of fat kid who was a little taller than me, who was actually an 8-year-old by the name of Jim Tyree. And he ended up pitching as an 8-year-old. But it actually worked out pretty good for me. As a 9-year-old, I played minor league White Sox. Actually, at the time it was called Ridge. Beverly was the Pee-wees, Ridge was the minors. Little League was Little League. And so in Ridge, I batted about 600. Played with Mickey Fazan and Glenn Williamson. Can't remember how well our team did. Nobody got trophies for participating back then. The next year I was drafted by Mr. Finn with the Major League Indians as a 10-year-old. There were some real good pitchers back then. Kevin Barrett, Greg Scow, Pat Doherty, big scary guys. Mr. Finn, we had one practice a year. So we would come out and meet and then just come to all the games. I guess we didn't need that much. Well, maybe we needed a little more practice because we never won anything. So my 12-year-old teammates were Charlie Cullinan and Dennis Mitchell and Keith Pappas, who we had at least 4 All-Stars, although they just invented All-Stars that year, I believe. Mr. Tom Fox of Fox's Pizza took his championship Redlegs, I think over at Evergreen Park for the first All-Star. We'd never heard of All-Stars. 115th and Homewood was the Little League field, and had a fence and had a hot dog stand. I'd often have to walk from 101st and Charles. That was a long walk. It was an even longer walk home. Back then, you didn't hear, there weren't many parents going to games, and there was hardly anybody going from Charles Street. Charlie Cullinan hit the last home run in Little League field. That was when we were 12, so that would have been 68, 69. When Dave Lambert, Peter Kelly, and Eric Pappas were 13, as far as I understand it, they didn't want to go and play Pony League at Kennedy Park like we all did. So they had enough guys to have a senior league here, which I believe they won as 13s and 14s, and then they decided to make it a 15-year-old league so they could win again. I was umpiring semi-pro at McKinley Park. Pat Curtin, my friend, was the umpire-in-chief, so I got all the championship games, and there were classic teams. They had Bart Clifford and Jimmy Gavin and Billy Vogt, really good players, but nobody had three great players on their team like Kelly and Lambert and Pappas. So I'm umpiring I think it was the 14-year-old championship series. It was always against Billy Vogt, and Billy'd end up losing 2-1 by an error on the second baseman or something. But it's probably no score. Peter Kelly's pitching, and he's got a 3-0 count on like the number 8 batter, and he throws it. It might have been an inch off of the black, and I called it a strike, and Peter fell off the mound in surprise. So the next pitch, right down the middle, ball 4. And the co-trio of managers of Lambert and Kelly and my old teammate Keith Pappas are questioning the umpire's call. And Eric Pappas was catching. He took the mask off and said, "You know, Blue, that looked pretty good." And I said, "Eric, go talk to your pitcher, because I might not call a strike the rest of the day." So Eric went out and talked some sense into Peter Kelly, and we resumed our game. Well, my lessons and my great teaching from baseball came when I started coaching and teaching baseball. I was working with Pat Curtin, and Pat was working for the city, so he could get out here early and get a diamond. And before the season started, we'd practice 6 days a week. I think Pat wanted to practice 7, but we had to refrain from Sundays. But well, another story is the draft. But the kids we got were not necessarily great baseball players, but they learned to love to play baseball. So we'd teach them how to play in the outfield, and they'd get batting practice every day, and by the end of the year they were really sad that baseball season had ended, and they'd learned a lot about baseball, and I'm sure a lot of them are still baseball fans. The greatest quality a teammate can have would be encouragement. One of my teammates was John Wazorek, and John was encouraging, but not always in a positive manner. John was a very good baseball player. He was short and he was fast, and he wasn't greatly understanding of people who didn't understand the game of baseball, and he would encourage them to learn more.